Commander Velthak stepped onto the bridge of his massive warship as it broke through Earth's cloudy atmosphere. His dark purple skin gleamed under the ship's bright lights, and his four eyes scanned the data screens with confidence. The Corvani Empire had conquered 47 worlds in the past century, and this small blue planet would be number 48. "Status report," he demanded, his voice echoing through the metallic corridors. Zixara, his tactical officer, turned from her. Station, her silver uniform was perfectly pressed, and her webbed hands moved quickly across the holographic displays. "Sir, the planet's dominant species appears to be bipedal mammals. They have no natural armor, no claws, no venom sacs. Their reaction time is slower than a Drenthok slug." Velthok nodded with satisfaction. The reconnaissance probes had been watching Earth for 3 months, and every report confirmed the same thing. Humans were weak. Fragile creatures who relied on primitive metal projectiles for weapons. Their military technology was laughably outdated compared to Corvani plasma cannons and energy shields. "Begin the assault on the eastern continent," Velthok commanded. "Target their military installations first." Standard conquest protocol. The first wave of dropships launched from the mothership's belly like silver insects. Each ship carried 30 Corvani soldiers equipped with the finest weapons the Empire could produce. Their destination was a city called Sol, home to over 9 million humans and several military bases. Velthak watched through his tactical display as the ships descended toward the city's outskirts. The humans had detected their approach and were scrambling their defensive forces. He could see small vehicles racing along the ground, carrying soldiers to defensive positions. It was almost pathetic. "First contact in 30 seconds, Zixara," announced the lead dropship touched down in a cloud of dust and steam. Corvani soldiers poured out, their energy weapons charging with a high-pitched whine. They expected to see humans running in terror, screaming and abandoning their posts. Instead, they met Captain Kim Taeho and his infantry unit. The human captain was shorter than most Corvani soldiers. With dark hair and determined eyes, he held what appeared to be an ancient chemical projectile weapon. Behind him, 42 soldiers took defensive positions behind concrete barriers and metal vehicles. "Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick," Corvani squad leader announced through his translator. Kim Taeho spat on the ground and raised his weapon. "Come and take it," he replied in broken Corvani. What happened next shocked every observer. On the command ship, the humans opened fire with their primitive weapons. But they did not retreat when the Corvani returned fire with superior technology. Instead, they fought harder. When one human fell, the others did not panic or flee. They became more aggressive, more determined. "Sir, they're not following standard retreat protocols," Zixara reported, her voice filled with confusion. "According to all our data, they should be running by now." Velthak frowned as he watched the battle unfold. The humans were taking heavy casualties, but they refused to give ground. One soldier, Sergeant Park Min-soo, grabbed a bundle of explosives and charged directly at a Corvani walker. The massive war machine fired its plasma cannon, but the human kept running even as the energy beam burned through his shoulder. Park Min-soo reached the walker and detonated the explosives. The blast killed him instantly, but it also crippled the war machine's left leg, sending it crashing to the ground. The human had traded his life for a piece of equipment worth more than most planets' annual income. "Impossible," Velthak muttered. "No species fights like this." The battle raged for 6 hours. Every tactical model predicted that the humans would surrender within 90 minutes, but they continued fighting with increasing fury. When their ammunition ran low, they used rocks and metal bars. When their positions were overrun, they fought with their bare hands. Lieutenant Lee So-young and her squad of 12 soldiers had been assigned to guard a simple supply depot. When 3 full Corvani platoons surrounded the building, she should have surrendered immediately. Instead, she turned the depot into a fortress. Her soldiers used supply crates to build walls, fuel containers to create explosive traps, and medical supplies to treat their wounds so they could keep fighting. For 6 hours, 90 Corvani soldiers tried to capture a building defended by 12 humans. The humans had inferior weapons, no backup, and no hope of victory. They fought. Anyway, when the building finally fell, only Lee So-young remained alive. She was found clutching a grenade with its pin pulled. By the end of the first day, the Corvani had won every battle. They controlled the landing zones, the supply depots, and the strategic positions. But they had lost more soldiers in one day than in the previous 3 invasions combined. The humans had cost them dearly for every meter of ground, Commander Zixara said quietly, studying the casualty reports. Perhaps we underestimated them. Velthak stared at the tactical display showing the conquered territories. Victory had never felt so much like defeat. Chief Analyst Mortigan sat in her sterile white laboratory, surrounded by data screens showing psychological profiles of captured humans. Her 6-fingered hands moved across the holographic displays. As she studied brain scans, behavioral patterns, and stress responses, 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began, and nothing made sense anymore. Every military textbook in the Corvani Empire taught the same basic truth. Apply enough pressure to any enemy, they will break. Fear, hunger, exhaustion, and loss would eventually destroy the will to fight. This principle had worked on every species the Empire had encountered. The Zephyrians surrendered after losing their capital city. The Drenthoks submitted when their food supplies were cut off. The Vorthen gave up when their leaders were captured. Humans were different. They were becoming more dangerous as the war continued, not less. Commander Velthak Mortigan spoke into her communication device. I need to show you something urgent. Burn marks and scratches covered the metal plates, evidence of the fierce fighting that raged across the planet's surface. They're not behaving like any species we've studied, Mortigan began, pulling up a holographic display of combat footage. Watch this. The screen showed the ruins of Busan, a coastal city that had been bombed heavily during the first week of invasion. Smoke rose from collapsed buildings and rubble filled the streets. In the center of the destruction, a single human figure moved between the broken concrete structures. Corporal Choi Haijin was 24 years old, according to her military records. She had lost her entire squad in the bombing but continued fighting alone for 72 hours. No food, no water, no backup. She used the rubble to create sniper positions, picking off Corvani soldiers one by one with her primitive rifle. Should have surrendered or died from exhaustion, Mortigan explained. Instead, she killed 18 of our soldiers before we cornered her. The footage showed the final moments. Choi Haijin stood in a destroyed building surrounded by 30 Corvani soldiers. Their weapons were aimed at her, and she had nowhere to run. Any rational being would have dropped their weapon and begged for mercy. Instead, she smiled. The expression was calm, almost peaceful. She pulled the pin from a grenade, held it close to her body, and closed her eyes. The explosion killed her. Instantly, but it also took 3 Corvani soldiers with her and wounded 7 others. It's their pack bonding, Mortigan continued, switching to another recording. When one member dies, the others don't retreat. They fight twice as hard too. Avenge their dead. The new footage showed Captain Zhang Wubin, 30-year-old officer who had served in the human military for 8 years. He was leading a patrol through the streets of Seoul when Corvani forces ambushed his unit. The attack was perfectly executed using superior weapons and tactics. Sergeant Yoon Da-hai, Zhang Wubin's best friend since military academy, was killed in the first seconds of the ambush. The plasma blast burned through her chest armor like paper. She died calling out Zhang Wubin's name. What happened next defied all logical behavior. Instead of retreating or calling for backup, Zhang Wubin became something else entirely. He moved through the urban ruins like a ghost, using destroyed buildings and abandoned vehicles for cover. In the space of 6 hours, he single-handedly infiltrated a Corvani command post and eliminated an entire intelligence cell of 12 soldiers. He used kitchen knives, broken glass, and improvised explosives, Mortigan reported. Our soldiers never saw him coming. He killed them all and disappeared back into the city. Velthak studied the footage with growing unease. This is not normal military behavior. It gets worse, Mortigan said, bringing up another file. Look at this interrogation. The screen showed Private Nam Suho, a young human who had been captured during a failed assault on a Corvani supply depot. He sat in a metal chair, his hands bound behind his back. Two Corvani guards stood nearby, their weapons ready. According to standard procedure, the human should have been broken by fear and pain. Instead, Nam Suho appeared calm and alert. He studied his captors with intelligent eyes, observing their behavior and listening to their conversations. He's been asking questions about our military structure, Mortigan explained. Innocent questions about promotions, honor codes, and chain of command. But watch what happens. The recording showed Nam Suho talking to his guards during their shift change. He mentioned casually that Guard A seemed much more skilled than Guard B. He suggested that Guard A deserved a promotion for his excellent service. He wondered aloud why Guard B had been given the same rank when his performance was clearly inferior. Within 2 days, the guards were arguing. Within a week, they were fighting. Guard A reported Guard B for incompetence. Guard B accused Guard A of trying to steal his position. Unit's discipline collapsed. He's weaponizing our own social structure against us, Velthok realized with horror. That's not all, Mortigan continued. They're adapting to our technology at an impossible rate. She showed him footage of Major Lee Kung-soo, a human engineer who had been studying captured Corvane equipment. In just 2 days, he had developed countermeasures that neutralized their energy shields. His modifications were crude but effective, using human industrial materials to disrupt Corvani power systems. Tactics that worked on dozens of other worlds are becoming liabilities, Mortigan warned. They're learning from every engagement, improving their methods, and sharing information across their entire species. Velthek stared at the data in disbelief. At this rate, they'll be using our own technology against us within months. The Korean Military Academy stood like a fortress on the hillside outside Seoul, its concrete walls scarred by plasma burns. And missile impacts? Corvani soldiers had finally breached the main gate after 3 days of brutal fighting, expecting to find a simple training facility. Instead, they discovered something that would shake the Empire to its core. Analyst Mortigan arrived at the Academy 6 hours after its capture, her silver uniform pristine despite the chaos around her. She carried a portable data scanner, ready to catalog whatever primitive military knowledge the humans might possess. The building's interior was damaged but intact, with classrooms full of destroyed furniture and scattered papers. Begin scanning. The computer systems, she ordered her technical team. I want everything they have on military history and tactics. The first database they accessed contained basic training manuals. Mortigan scrolled through files about physical fitness, weapons maintenance, and basic combat formations. Nothing unusual. Then her scanner found the historical archives. Commander Velthek. She spoke into her communicator, her voice trembling. You need to see this immediately. 20 minutes later, Velthek stood in the Academy's main computer center. Watching data streams flow across multiple screens, the numbers were impossible to believe. They've been at war with themselves for over 10,000 years, Mortigan reported, her 6 fingers pointing at timeline displays. Not just occasional conflicts, constant warfare. Every generation, every century, every millennium, the historical records were staggering. The database contained detailed accounts of thousands of human conflicts, each one studied and analyzed by military scholars. Ancient siege tactics from civilizations called Rome and Mongol territories. Desert warfare from places named Egypt and Arabia. Naval battles from islands called Britain and Japan. Look at this. Mortigan pulled up a file labeled Guerrilla Warfare. They developed these tactics fighting in jungles called Vietnam and mountains called Afghanistan. They studied how to defeat larger, better-equipped forces using nothing but determination and clever strategy. Velthak studied the tactical diagrams with growing unease. The humans had documented methods for fighting in every possible environment. Arctic tundra, tropical rainforests, urban cities, underground tunnel systems. They had developed strategies for every conceivable situation. They don't just fight. Wars, Mortigan explained, accessing another database. They study them, they perfect them, They treat warfare as ... as art. The evidence was overwhelming. Human military academies didn't just teach current tactics, they required students to study every major conflict in their species' history. Young officers learned about ancient battles fought with swords and spears, then applied those lessons to modern warfare with advanced weapons. "Sir," a Corvani soldier called from across the room, "we found prisoners in the detention area." Althuk followed the soldier to a reinforced section of the building where they had captured several academy instructors. The most senior prisoner was Colonel Park Jae-sung, a 50-year-old human with gray hair and calm eyes. He sat on a metal bench in his cell, reading a book about military strategy. Colonel Velthak addressed him through the cell bars. "We'll answer our questions about human military capabilities." Park Jae-sung looked up from his book and smiled. "Of course, Commander. I'm happy to discuss military theory with a fellow professional." The interrogation began routinely, but within minutes, the human was making veteran Corvani officers uncomfortable. He described their attack formations with perfect accuracy, then casually mentioned 17 different ways to defeat them. "Your formation is based on the Drenthen battle doctrine," Park Jae-sung explained as if teaching a class. "We studied that in our second-year tactical classes. The weakness is the gap between your heavy units and support elements. A skilled commander could exploit that with rapid flanking movements." Velthak felt his blood run cold. The Drenthen battle doctrine was classified information known only to senior Empire officers. How could this human professor know about it? "We study all forms of warfare," Park Jae-sung continued calmly. "Corvani tactics, Zephyrian strategies, Vorthone defensive formations. We prepare for every possible enemy." In another cell, Lieutenant Kang Myung sat, surrounded by books and papers. She had been researching historical human conflicts when the academy fell, and the Corvani had captured her in the library. During questioning, she revealed the true scope of human military knowledge. "We don't just prepare for war," she explained. To her interrogators, "We prepare for every possible war. Desert combat, space battles, underwater operations, psychological warfare. We study how to fight enemies who are stronger, faster, more advanced, more numerous." She showed them textbooks containing thousands of different military philosophies, each adapted to different terrains, technologies, and enemy types. Human soldiers learned about ancient Greek formations, Roman engineering, Mongol cavalry tactics, and modern urban warfare. "Every defeat teaches us something new," Kang Myung said. "Every victory shows us what works. We've been learning from warfare for 10,000 years." The most disturbing discovery came from the Academy's oldest archives. Mordigan found a document written over 2,000 years ago by a human philosopher called Sun Tzu. The book was titled The Art of War, and it contained strategies that the Corvani Empire had never considered. "Listen to this," Mordigan read aloud. "All warfare is based on deception. Unable to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must appear inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away." The concepts were revolutionary. While the Corvani Empire relied on superior technology and direct assault, humans had developed subtle, complex strategies that turned an enemy's strength against them. "They've been thinking about warfare longer than we've been a spacefaring species," Mordigan reported to Velthek. "While other species developed military doctrine to conquer others, humans developed it to survive against themselves." The massive Corvani fleet filled Earth's orbit like a dark cloud of metal and death. 1,000 warships, each bristling with plasma cannons and energy weapons, surrounded the small blue planet. Commander Veltek stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the impressive display of military power through the transparent aluminum windows. "Status report," he commanded, his four eyes gleaming with confidence. "All ships in position, sir," Zixara replied from her station. "This is the largest military deployment in Empire history. 1,000 warships, 200,000 soldiers, and enough firepower to crack a planet's surface." Velthek nodded with satisfaction. The past months of fighting had been difficult, but now the Empire would end this war with overwhelming force. No species could resist such massive military power. "Begin the final assault," he ordered. This ends now. The fleet moved toward Earth's surface like a swarm of metallic predators. Dropships launched from the main vessels, carrying invasion forces to every major city on the planet. The plan was simple: simultaneous attacks on all human military installations, followed by occupation of major population centers. But as the first reports came in, something unexpected happened. The humans, who had been fighting each other for thousands of years, suddenly stopped their internal conflicts and united against the common enemy. Zara said, studying her tactical displays with confusion. They're not fighting like separate nations anymore. They're fighting like a single organism. General Kim Hae-won, who had commanded Korean forces during the early battles, was now coordinating with Colonel Martinez from the Americas and Commander Petrov from the northern continents. Languages that had been barriers between human nations became irrelevant as they shared tactical information and resources. The transformation was incredible. Human forces that had been scattered and disorganized suddenly moved with perfect coordination. Supply lines that had been vulnerable became protected by international cooperation. Military units that had fought each other for generations now worked together seamlessly. Captain Song Min-jae demonstrated this new unity perfectly. His Korean Special Forces unit had been fighting Corvani invaders for months, but now they received support from American aircraft, Russian intelligence, and European logistics. His forces moved through the countryside like ghosts, striking Corvani. Supply convoys and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. How are they coordinating so effectively? Elthok demanded. The answer came from an unexpected source. Major Shin Da-jin, a computer specialist in the Korean military, had somehow infiltrated the Corvani communication network. Her cyber warfare unit had been studying captured Corvani technology for weeks, learning how their systems worked. "They're inside our system," Zara warned, her voice filled with alarm. "They're using our own technology to coordinate attacks." The humans had turned the Empire's advanced communication network against them. False orders were sent to Corvani units, causing them to attack empty positions while human forces struck real targets. Supply ships received wrong coordinates and delivered weapons to human forces instead of Corvani troops. The psychological operations were even more devastating. Sergeant Lee Dong-wook had been captured 3 weeks earlier during a failed assault. On a Corvani command post, his captors believed they had broken him through interrogation, but he had actually been gathering intelligence on Corvani command structure and military hierarchy. The information he provided to human intelligence services was invaluable. He had learned about promotion systems, honor codes, and rivalry between different Corvani military units. Human operatives used this knowledge to create discord among Empire forces. False messages were sent to Corvani commanders, suggesting that their superiors were planning to replace them with younger officers. Rumors spread about unfair distribution of resources and honors. Units that had fought together for years began to distrust each other. "They're not just fighting a war," Mortajin realized with growing horror. "They're becoming the war itself." The humans had adapted their entire civilization to serve the conflict. Factories that had produced civilian goods were converted to weapon production. Scientists who had studied peaceful research turned their knowledge to military applications. Even children were contributing by gathering intelligence and supporting resistance operations. Private Han Soman exemplified this transformation. She was a 20-year-old communications officer who had been assigned to a damaged human spacecraft. When Corvani forces surrounded the ship, she could have surrendered and saved her life. Instead, she made a different choice. "All units, this is Private Han Salman," she broadcast on all frequencies. "I'm uploading tactical data on Corvani ship vulnerabilities. Use this information to target their weak points." She spent her final minutes alive, transmitting everything she had learned about Corvani technology and tactics. The data included shield frequencies, weapon charging cycles, and structural weaknesses in their ship designs. Then she detonated the ship's reactor, destroying herself and a nearby Corvani flagship. Her sacrifice was not unique. Across the planet, humans were making similar choices. Every death became a lesson for the survivors. Every defeat revealed new information about Corvani capabilities and limitations. The species that had spent millennia fighting each other was now focused entirely on destroying the invaders. Sir Zixara reported, her voice shaking. We're losing ships faster than we can replace them. The humans are adapting to our technology and turning our own systems against us. Velthek stared at the tactical display, watching his mighty fleet being slowly destroyed by a species that should have been easily conquered. The humans had become something he had never encountered before, a unified, learning, evolving enemy that grew stronger with each battle. The final battle took place in the cold darkness of space. High above Earth's pale moon, Commander Velthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the last desperate fight between human and Corvani forces through the massive viewing screen. His empire had committed everything to this moment: their best ships, their finest soldiers, their most advanced weapons. Yet somehow, the humans were winning. Status report, Velthak demanded, his four eyes focused on the tactical displays showing the chaotic battle around them. We've lost 37 ships in the last hour, Zixara reported, her voice strained. The humans are adapting to our weapons faster than we can modify them. Velthak watched in amazement as Colonel Osung Huan commanded a small squadron of human fighters. His ships were damaged, outnumbered, and outgunned by Corvani vessels. Any reasonable commander would have retreated or surrendered. Instead, Osung Huan did something incredible. When his fighters ran out of missiles, he ordered his pilots to collect debris from destroyed ships and use it as projectiles. Chunks of metal and broken equipment became deadly weapons when fired. From modified cargo launchers, when the Corvani jammed their communications, Osung Huan developed a new system using reflected laser light to send messages between ships. They innovate, Velthak whispered to Mortigen, who stood beside him analyzing the battle data. Every limitation becomes an advantage. The humans had no advanced technology, no energy shields, no plasma cannons, but they had something more dangerous: the ability to adapt and improve in real time. When their supplies ran low, they turned captured Corvani equipment into improvised weapons. When their ships were damaged, they combined broken parts to create new functions. Look at this. Mortigen showed him the tactical display, pointing to a human vessel that had caught her attention. Captain Park Yuna has somehow modified her damaged ship to emit the same energy signature as our vessels. Velthak studied the display with growing unease. The human captain had taken a ship that should have been destroyed and turned it into a perfect disguise. Her vessel appeared on Corvani's sensors as a friendly ship, allowing her to get close enough to enemy vessels for devastating surprise attacks. She's using our own identification systems against us, Mortigen continued. Our ships can't tell the difference between her vessel and our own forces. The revelation that truly shook Velthak came when they captured Major Kim Suhan, the human tactical coordinator who had been directing the defense of Earth's orbital stations. The prisoner was brought to the flagship's interrogation room, where Velthak expected to finally break a human spirit and learn their weaknesses. Instead, Kim Suhan sat calmly in his chair and began to educate his captors. You fight wars too. Conquer, he explained, with the patience of a teacher addressing students. We fight wars to survive. There's a fundamental difference in our approach. Kim Suhan showed them data files from human military academies, revealing something that horrified the Corvani officers. Human children didn't just study their own species' conflicts. They learned about every form of warfare from every species they had encountered. Young humans studied Corvani tactics, Zephyrian strategies, and Drenthok defensive formations. Don't just learn tactics, Kim Suhan continued. We learn to think like our enemies, to anticipate their moves, to understand their weaknesses. By the time we fight you, we've already fought you 1,000 times in our minds. The human pulled up training videos from Earth's military schools. Children as young as 12 were studying alien battle formations, learning to identify the strengths and weaknesses of different species' fighting styles. They practiced scenarios where they fought enemies with superior technology, greater numbers, and better weapons. You see war as a tool, Kim Suhan said, his voice calm and steady. We see it as evolution. Every conflict makes us stronger, smarter, more adaptable. Every defeat teaches us something new. Every victory shows us what works. The final shock came when Lieutenant Bae Yoon-ji contacted the flagship directly. According to Corvani records, she had been killed during the first week of fighting when her unit was overrun by Empire forces. Her death had been confirmed by multiple witnesses and recorded in official reports. Commander Velthek. Her voice came through the communication system. "I need to speak with you." "Impossible," Velthek muttered. "You're dead." No, Bae Yoon-jae replied. "I've been alive all along, studying your culture from within your own ranks. I've been wearing Corvani armor and speaking your language for months. Your soldiers accepted me as one of their own." The truth was devastating. The human had infiltrated Corvani forces, learned their customs, and gathered intelligence on their military structure. For months, she had been feeding information to human resistance fighters, helping them plan attacks and avoid traps. They don't just fight wars, Velthok realized with growing horror. They evolve through them, as he watched through the viewing. Screen human forces were already reverse engineering captured Corvani technology. They improved upon the designs with terrifying speed, creating weapons that were more efficient than the originals. Ships that had been built by the Empire's finest engineers were being modified by human mechanics who had learned about the technology just days earlier. Sir Zixera said urgently, "They're preparing to launch attacks on our home systems. They've learned enough about our technology to build their own spacecraft." Veltok stared at the tactical display, watching humans prepare to take their fight beyond Earth's boundaries. They were getting ready to become the invaders, to carry their war to the stars. "Full retreat," he ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "We're leaving the system, sir," Zixara questioned, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Because if we stay," Velthek said, "watching as humans prepare to become something the universe had never seen before, we'll have to become something. We're not, and they'll still find a way to win."